I'm Shirley Adams for the Sewing Connection. This is Series 16, Program 4. As I travel, I love to spend a free morning beachcombing, and I've picked up shells on our east and west and Gulf coasts, as well as those around Australia's edges. But the shells we're going to be exploring today are just as fascinating, except they're the kind you wear. They're bodices. Now notice lately how there are fewer oversized tops than there used to be in past years. We're seeing closer fitting, shapelier clothing, and that of course is going to mean more darts. Now those darts don't have to be the common variety. Move them around to new locations and make them as decorative as they are functional. The starting place is a basic bodice, altered to fit, and then there are no limitations. Now what brand of basic bodice you use doesn't matter, whatever you prefer, and almost every brand does have something. So this is what a basic bodice looks like. It isn't pretty, it isn't meant to be, it is just a fitted dress. And as you take your measurements, and do take true measurements, and be really honest about this if you want them to mean anything whatsoever, because we frankly have been cheating for the last few years. We have been wearing probably patterns that are smaller than we really need because they've been oversized. Once they get more closely fitted and shapelier, then you better be honest about it so that you end up with the right size and have a lot less alteration for yourself. Well, go ahead with your measurements and cut out, because they're always multi-sized no matter what brand you use. You can adjust it to whatever size you are. And once you cut it out that's closest to your size, go ahead and make it up and then make alterations, and you can go on from there to design. Now usually what you see advised to make it up is a checked fabric like this gingham, and the reason for that is because there are a series of vertical and horizontal lines, and by doing the darts or the seams or whatever this way and that, taking them in, letting them out, you can make those lines fall just straight every way, and that tells you whether it is fitting right or whether it isn't. So it's an aid for you to have it checked. But very often what I use is just whatever I happen to have that I don't want in my stash. This, for instance, was just a fabric I didn't want, and so I made up the basic in that to see what alterations I need. There are a few people, very few, who will not need alterations. Almost everybody does, though, so that it works out right for you. And then what typically we see in things that are darted right now look like this, just a very basic shell with that little side dart. That's usually what they look like. Now when you make up that basic, it's going to be quite fitted. This is not. This blouse that I have that I'd wear under a suit, it's not fitted. There's a lot of room there. It's kind of blousy and loose fitting, even though it did have that dart. But what you make up with that basic shell in any size pattern is going to be quite snug. There's breathing room there, but that's about all. There really isn't room to live in comfortably as you're used to doing. So what I've done here, as you can see, is add a little extra in the arm's eye and come out more at the bust and then tapered in. I just made it more livable so that when I put the sleeves in, I can move around and it won't feel snug anywhere. Notice that I've also, for some of the things I'll make, I would add shoulder pad room here at the top, because right now it doesn't have any shoulder pad room. And if you're making something that needs pads, then remember that as you're changing the pattern. And then go ahead and make up whatever it is you want to do. Now, what I have here on the table, I'm going to show how you can manipulate those darts to many other places, because that's the fun of it. We like to do that. We like to do some designing. You have that capability because it's a really easy thing to do, and everyone can do it successfully. Now here is maybe the most common dart, the one that you just saw in that pink shell. It's just that one side dart. And this one is quite a large dart, and that would make this a fitted bodice. Unlike the shell, which would hang straight, this one would actually be fitted in at the waist. Well, from this we're going to make a whole pattern, and what this is just the stitching lines as you see here. And we know that we need more than stitching lines. We need some seam allowances too. And so to make those seam allowances, how you would do that and make it come out just right is you always think, first of all, what direction a dart will be folded when you fold it up. And naturally, it's always going to, if you have a horizontal dart, it's going to go down. So you start by making the first fold on the lower part of it, since you want the dart to go down. And then the edge of a table is a good place to go, so that you have that point, so that you can put that point that you folded right where the apex of your bust is, put it there on the table so that it very easily folds into this dart. And once you have it folded, go ahead and tape it in place. And now what we have is, remember, just the stitching lines. We need to have seam allowances. So you would probably more accurately than what I'm doing here, you would add those seam allowances. Usually 5/8 of an inch is what we're used to. This is a half size pattern, so I'm just adding about 5/16 of an inch here. And I want this in the taped position, the shaped position with that dart folded out. I want it in this position as I do the cutting. Whoops, got a little caught here in my scissors. And the reason for this, the reason I want that there is because otherwise, boy, I'm having a hard time with this stiff paper. Otherwise, if I don't have it there, how am I going to cut it just right as it goes on past here? Because what happens as you cut it, and then go ahead and open it up again to look at it, here's what it would look like. And you would have this dart jutting out at just the right angle. If you didn't fold it in position first, there's no way to guess exactly how that might happen, and especially if you have this dart in some odd places, then it would be hard to do. So here's one of them. It looks like this, but this isn't the only choice. We can do a whole lot of other ones. So let's try a few others. Now here are some of the choices that you might make. You can, any of these points that I have here, you can have a dart going out to any of those edges. It might be into your arm's eye or up into this shoulder corner or to the middle of the shoulder or to the neck shoulder point or wherever you want. I'm just going to go around the clock and show you what they look like when they're at all these places. So we'll just kind of travel clockwise. And the first one that's here would be in the arm's eye. It would come up here, or armhole, whichever you prefer. So if we have that one, here's what it looks like. And the way I got this, by the way, is just by cutting this. And I'm not going to cut it quite to the point because I don't want it to fall away. I want it to stay here. But if you just cut right to there and then move it over, you can see how you have that same dart here. Now this one doesn't look quite as big a dart as the first one did because it's a little shorter. It's not as far to your arm's eye as it is to your side seam. So it looks shorter, but it's actually the very same shape is what it will give your garment, so it doesn't matter that it's shorter. Now, by the way, anytime you have darts, they never come right out to the apex of your bust. They're always cut a little bit short. I was just folding that a little better. And so what we do after we make the pattern, when you're actually stitching these in, you'd cut them about, somewhere less than an inch shorter than the apex, maybe about 3/4 of an inch or something like that, just so it doesn't look so funny. Okay, so here's one of them, and that would look like this, and we could fold that then and add the seam allowances and do the very same thing with it that we did with the first one. Or if you wanted to come one more and bring it up to the shoulder, that one is just as easy. We just cut that one, close up the former ones, and we have a new one that's up here in the shoulder. And so you can see, you don't see this very often, but every once in a while you do. And when you see one like this, very often what you see, I'll get just a little teeny piece of tape here so I can get rid of these temporarily. What you very often see as you have this is hard to deal with. Maybe I'll get a bigger piece of tape because I can deal with that more easily. Okay, what this might be is sort of a pleat or a tuck there on the shoulder is how you would commonly see it if you would see this shape, but it is another possibility, and it gives you some design opportunities to do that. Or very often you see one right in the middle of the shoulder here, and when you see this one, and again I'll just cut it and show you how that forms. When you see this one, it looks like it's a whole lot bigger, and it looks like, are we having something funny going on here? Are we going to have too big a dart? But if I put this together and put it on top of my first one, you can see they are the very same. They're the very same shape, even though this is a big long dart and that first one was a shorter dart. If I put them right together here, you can see that they are the same here at the front of it, at the point of it. It's like having a big or a small pie. If you had a 12-inch pie or a 6-inch pie, this would be the 6-inch pie. So you have a smaller little sliver of it, even though it's cut at the same angle. This would be that bigger pie, and so this looks a lot bigger, even though it's actually the very same thing. Is that easy to understand? Okay, then let's move on with these and see what are some of the other possibilities. We might rotate that, oh, here's the shoulder, and I already did that one. Let me move it over. We might rotate it one more space over, right to the neck point. Now, we don't very often see it up here at this neck shoulder point, but it's a possibility. We could do that, and so that's how it would be. Just again, slash, tape the old one closed, the new one automatically opens, and we have that. One that we might see a little more commonly, even though you aren't always aware of the fact that you're seeing it, would be one right in the middle of the neckline, and that's what I have here. And that was made, of course, by just slashing it right here at the neckline, opening it up, and it looks like this. And let me show you some examples of this. First, I'll show you here on the table what that looks like in full size. Here's how it is, and this I would make into a blouse maybe. I don't have any shape in this, and it's longer, the white paper one. And you can see how I've folded out that side dart, and it automatically opens up here in the neckline. And I'd like you to look at that on a model. She's wearing the blue sleeveless shell, and see how there are darts going up into the neckline. Now this has a purpose. The reason for these darts in the neckline, see how I've sewn those fabric tubes between the darts? So it just makes a really pretty little front as you wear this under a suit jacket and gives something different. But where I needed, or why I needed the darts there, is because I had to attach those tubes someplace, and this was a good place to do it. Or notice on the red blouse, how it's the same thing there in the neckline, and I simply divided this. Instead of putting it in one big dart on each neck side, I cut it into several little darts. And so same thing again, it fits the very same way, but it gives another little design opportunity. Or on the black blouse, notice that cowl neck that's all droopy there and draping in front. Now what that is the same darts going up into the neckline. They simply haven't been stitched in. They're just left out and it's just hanging loose, and this is why it drapes down like this. Usually when you do something like a cowl neckline, you cut it on the bias because it drapes nicer, so you don't want that cut on the straight. Now notice on the magenta blouse right next to it, this is the same cowl neckline. What we've done is just pull out that, for instance, let's look at the black one, just pull it out in front and fold it over to the side, and now you have the same thing as on the magenta. There's just been a button and buttonhole added there to give it, again, a completely different look. Don't you love the fact that you can do whatever you want to? It's all that easy. Well, let's keep on going around that clock and see what else we can do, what other places they can go to. Another place might be right to the front neck point is where what I have here, and you already know how to do that, so I won't slash my little pattern again, but we can take it to that front neck. So I'll just put that one down here, or we can move it around again, and this is coming down the center front. This one's right here in front. Now you don't see this one as often, but you might if you had, for instance, a strapless fitted dress, a swimsuit, something of that sort. It very well may have this dart in front, as there's some stitching there to shape it in. So it can be done, and it is done. Some design periods it's done more than in others. So it depends on what fashion period we're in. Now this one moves way down to the front corner, right at the center front waist is where this is, and that's just as doable. We might stitch that in as a dart, or there again it might be tucks. It might be something other than a dart, but it's a possibility. Here's another one, and this one is moved around to the waist to a pretty common place, really. It's right in the center of the waist is where this one is. And this one might be one that you see a lot more often, so more common there. Now here's one that we haven't seen for a while, not very much of it anyway, but what this one is called a French dart, and it comes right to this side waist corner. And it gives a pretty line. Sometimes you see these on about everything you look at in some design periods as you look through costume history. Sometimes it's kind of an oddity. But any of these places are possibilities, or anything in between. Now just as you can get this all around wherever you want to as we went around the clock, you can also take this one big dart that we have here, and you can divide that dart and have two darts instead of one. So let's just see how that works. If I take that one dart that I had, and I'll move some of this out of the way here. If I take that one dart that I had, and instead of having just one big dart, just here at the waist, here I'll put it on the table so you can see it better. If I would just draw another line at the waist and get rid of that one, I'll just pull it out to get rid of it. And now I can move this around so that I have two darts, one at the waist and one on the side. And this is what your basic bodice has in any commercial pattern that you use, the fitting pattern. It always has a split dart like this. It's the same amount of shape as that original one that was on the side, but now it's just been divided into two different places. So this might be something that affords, again, a whole lot more opportunities because you can move this one so many ways. It can be divided any way you want to. It can be a combination of these two, or it can go up to the shoulder, or be a combination of a side, an arm side dart and the bottom one. Anything that you want, you can do there. Well, the fact that this is so easy, let's think, now that you know how to do darts and now you know how to change them any way you'd like to, let's think what you can do also if you see a picture you like in a magazine or a catalog. And here's one that I saw, and I thought, you know, that's kind of fascinating. I haven't seen anything like that before, so I thought, I'll just make it. And this is what I'm wearing, because anything you see, you can make. Anything that you dream up in your head, you can also make. Just try it out and see how it works. Now, what's unusual about this is ordinarily a dart points to the biggest bulge in the area. In this case, since we're talking about bodices, it would be your bust is where a dart points. But notice how this dart not only points to the bust, but there's one up above and two down below. Well, how this is done is, and I'll just open this up and show you what papers I have here, how I developed this pattern. Here was the same thing with the one main dart that I did in this pattern paper. And then that one main dart that's right here, it's still here. I've just shortened it. Instead of coming all the way to the bust, it's been shortened about an inch here. So here's my main dart. And then the second dart that used to be at the waistline, notice how it is now folded out. It's underneath there. And before I folded that in place, what I did was do some slashing of this pattern. I like to work in smaller pieces like this to make sure it works out before I then do it in a full-size pattern, just because it takes a lot less paper. And sometimes what you are sure is going to work out in your head doesn't actually, and so it's a good idea to try it out to make sure you know what you're doing. But try this little exercise. Find any magazine pictures and make sure that you really can do the same thing. Okay, so what I've done here is slash this up above the bust so it's pointing higher, and then you have to have a flat pattern. You can't just have it slashed or nothing's going to happen. It's not going to open up like this at all until you then join right here at the apex of the bust. So you slash down there too. Now this is going to be ignored. We're not going to do anything with this line. It's just in the paper only. It won't appear in your fabric. What we will do in your fabric is just make the dart coming over to here. And you can see on the top I'm wearing, I have that same high dart, one that points to my bust, and then two down below. Now the two down below are the same way. We just slash them over to where we want them to be, and then up to the apex of the bust. And this one was done the same way. Slash it over and up. And we have a pattern that is actually going to work out and duplicate that picture. It's going to be the very same thing. All we need to do to it, of course, to make it into a full-size pattern, or a pattern instead of just a sloper like this without seams, we'd have to, of course, then add the seams to it. Unless you're working with a pattern that already has seams, and this is possible, then you won't have to add anything. They're already there. What you may have to do, though, even though you don't add seam allowances, you will have to fold all these little darts to cut the little juts that go out at the side seams to make sure that they're going to stitch back in place just right. And always remember, when it's a horizontal dart, you make your first fold, as I did here on the corner of the table, down at the bottom so that it folds down that way. If you have a vertical dart, they always fold toward the center, so you'd make your first fold on that dart line that's closest to the center and then fold it that direction so that you can cut. If you fold it the wrong way, you have some odd angles coming out there that don't shape out as easily. So think about that. Now this one that I'm wearing not only has a bodice and some sleeves, but it also has the lower part here. So let's think about what you can do with this lower part. I did the easy thing. I just took a skirt pattern, and it's a different brand than the bodice, which doesn't matter. Any brand will do. So I just took this basic pattern that's already altered so that it fits me, and I used only this top part. I simply traced the top part here of both the front and the back. And here I have them duplicated. Now what I see on this picture is something really unusual. It is a little dart right here. And that you never see one there, for goodness sake, in the upper hip area. You'd always have a dart coming here from the waist. Well, there's no reason why you can't transpose that dart too, the same as we did the bodice darts. So here's how you transpose it, both front and back. It's just a matter of folding out the waist dart, one or two, whatever there are two in this skirt pattern. So I folded out one completely, and to keep it a flat pattern so it wouldn't be rounded, I made a little slit here which made the hips a little fuller, which I wanted because in the picture you can see that stands out a little bit and it's fuller. This is why. And then what I did when I folded out the second one is just make a little slash here on the side, and that opened up as I folded in that second one. Isn't that easy? Isn't it amazing how you can do all this? So don't let it ever be a mystery again when you see pictures. And I've done the same thing with the back. And then to actually cut it out, I just made my patterns that were easier to pin to my fabric and go ahead and cut those out. It's going to work out every time. If your basic pattern fit you, then this will fit you also. And it's going to be really simple to do. Now what I notice also is that in the last several years, we haven't had any darts in the shoulders to speak of, in the back shoulder, and I hear so many of you complain about the fact that it doesn't feel right across the back. It feels snug on you. Now we're talking about people who maybe are a little bit rounded. Perhaps it's your shoulder blades, or maybe it's right in the center of your back. A Dowagers Hump is what that's usually called. Maybe that's where you're rounded. Well, here's what we do to this basic back. Now this one already had a dart on it, but if you have a pattern that doesn't have a dart, if your pattern looks like this, which frankly most of them do, and you feel it pulls here across the shoulder blades, this is what you can do. Just draw a line from the middle of your shoulder, because that's where that dart's going to be. Draw a line right there from the center, right down to your center back waist. And once you slash that and open it up, and you would open it up on your basic first, on some old piece of fabric that you don't care about, so that you can slash it and open it up. Open it whatever feels comfortable across here, however much that is. You might need a fitting partner to help you here, or maybe it's by trial and error, by taping something across it and trying it on a few times. And once you have just what you need here, what remains is a dart right here at the top. You simply shorten that dart and it's going to fit you beautifully. If you have, instead of shoulder blades that are prominent and that bother you, the way it fits there, if you have a Dowagers Hump, that's that little pad that's right here in the center back, right here, and you need that dart not here in the shoulder, but over here at the side. There's no reason why you can't cut your new dart at the side, and then just slash over here sideways, fold out that old dart, and you automatically, I could have done this more easily on the table, but I'm trying to do it quickly, so I didn't. Okay, fold out the old dart, you automatically have a new dart at the neckline instead of on the shoulder. Really easy to do these things, and this is why I keep using the same basic patterns over and over again, because it's so simple to do this. When you already know that your basic fits, then it's really time consuming to just do a lot of things like this instead of starting from scratch with a new pattern. Or sometimes with sleeves, you might find that, especially in a straight sleeve like this, a fitted sleeve, you might find that when you try to bend your elbow, it doesn't want to bend very well. That's because this is what we've been seeing in most sleeves lately. We've been seeing just straight sleeves like this. And used to be that we'd see a lot more elbow darts. Well, if you want an elbow dart to make it feel a little more comfortable, here's what you would do. Now this is where your elbow would be, approximately halfway between the center of the sleeve and the seam that's under your arm, right about halfway between them. That would be your elbow, and we know that's the back of it where your elbow is because there's a double notch there. Every brand of pattern has a double notch in back and a single notch in front. So you simply want to get a dart here. Here's how we do it. We'd go ahead and just put a line across it, make sure it goes right through that elbow point, and then we're going to slash that and open it up. And once it's opened up, I'll just go ahead and do that so that we have this open. Once it's opened up, however much you'd like to have it, usually an elbow dart isn't very large, but you can see then, again, you just shorten it so that it comes only to your elbow, and there's an elbow dart, and I have one in here too, And that's why, even though this is a pretty fitted sleeve, it bends easily because of that dart. Well, I have a feeling that you can do all these things quite easily. And with this little basic information, you can go on and do a whole lot of other things that you didn't think that you could do. I love to have this big surface here on the table to do this pattern work because I do so much of it. I'll have to tell you sometime, and I may not have time today, how this table came to be, because you know how sewers are the most resourceful people there are. I couldn't find a table on the market I liked, so I thought, okay, what am I going to do about this? I called the president of a furniture company to say, do you have anything following these specifications? I told him what I needed, and he said, well, draw me up a sketch and we'll see what we can do. This is the result. So this is, as I said, sewers are resourceful people. You know how to get from here to there. And so I'll tell you more about this table another time. Well, once we have all this mastered and once we know what you're doing, there's just no stopping you. You're going to be darted all over the place. Well, the shape may be just right, and some fabrics, though, need help in maintaining that look. And understructure is essential, and that includes interfacings, underlinings. Join me next time to decide which type to use and how to apply it.